It was supposed to be routine. A playoff game in Chicago, the kind the city had waited all season for. The arena pulsed with energy, red jerseys filling every seat, every voice rising with belief. The Bulls were in control. The scoreboard leaned comfortably in their favor. This wasn't desperation basketball, this was dominance. And at the center of it all was Derrick Rose, the hometown MVP, gliding across the court with explosive grace. Every possession felt measured. Every drive felt inevitable. Chicago wasn't just winning, it was sending a message. With just over a minute left, the outcome was nearly sealed. Coaches often rest the star, protect the future. The crowd had already begun celebrating the victory. But Derrick Rose was still on the floor. He had built his identity on relentless effort. He didn't ask for breaks. He attacked every possession. His coach trusted that mentality. Winning wasn't about comfort, it was about habits. The clock ticked under a minute. 47 seconds remained. It felt insignificant at the time. No one in the building sensed danger. No one imagined that history sometimes hides inside ordinary moments. The energy was triumphant. The Bulls were about to begin what many believed would be a deep playoff run. A championship didn't feel like a dream. It felt like a possibility. Those final seconds carried more weight than anyone realized. Ordinary decisions quietly shaped the future. Chicago celebrated, unaware that the final stretch was about to become one of the most discussed endings in NBA history. Analysts would later debate it endlessly, replaying the footage frame by frame. Why was he still in the game? Why risk the franchise cornerstone when victory was already secured? In hindsight, the questions feel obvious. But in that moment, there was no controversy. Derrick Rose was built to compete. He had carried the team all season. He thrived on rhythm, on staying engaged, on finishing what he started. Taking him out might have felt unnatural. He wasn't just a player protecting stats. He was a leader reinforcing standards. On the court, everything still looked normal. Rose caught the ball near the top of the key. The defense shifted instinctively, aware of his speed but perhaps less urgent with the clock winding down. The crowd buzzed, expecting one more flash of brilliance before the final horn. For Rose, it was another possession, another chance to assert control, to remind everyone why he was the league's MVP. There was no visible hesitation, no sign that fatigue or caution had entered his mind. Just instinct. This is how destiny often works. It doesn't announce itself with warning signs or dramatic music. It waits in routine movements, in habits formed over years of repetition. A drive to the basket, a planted foot, a split-second decision made without conscious thought. The game felt decided, but the story wasn't finished. The final seconds weren't dramatic because of the score. They were dramatic because they carried consequences no one could see. 47 seconds remained. Not enough time to change the outcome of the game, but enough time to change everything else. He drove left, just as he had done thousands of times before. It wasn't reckless. It wasn't forced. It was instinct. Derrick Rose split through the defense with that familiar burst, the same explosion that had made defenders look frozen. The crowd leaned forward, expecting another acrobatic finish, another reminder that their MVP could bend the game to his will. There was nothing unusual about the movement. A hard step, a quick gather, a plant, and then it happened. His left knee buckled beneath him. Not from contact, not from a dramatic collision, just a sudden, unnatural shift. His body collapsed forward, momentum carrying him to the hardwood as the ball rolled away. For a split second, there was confusion. Fans thought he might have slipped. Teammates hesitated, unsure, but Rose didn't rise. He clutched his knee, pain etched across his face in a way Chicago had never seen before. The arena, once roaring with celebration, fell into a stunned silence. It was the kind of silence that doesn't belong in sports. Trainers rushed onto the floor. Players from both teams stood still, watching. The scoreboard still glowed above them, but the game no longer mattered. Time felt irrelevant. Something deeper had shifted. As Rose was helped off the court, the cameras followed every step. His head lowered, his expression distant. The fans applauded, not in triumph, but in fear, clinging to hope that this was minor, temporary, manageable. Yet deep down, many sensed it. The way he couldn't put weight on the leg. The way his body language changed. This wasn't a bruise. It wasn't a tweak. It felt like a fracture in something much larger than a knee. In a matter of seconds, the future that once seemed unstoppable had been thrown into uncertainty. The diagnosis confirmed the nightmare: a torn ACL. 3 letters that carry enormous weight in professional sports. Rehabilitation would take months. The explosive athleticism that defined him would be tested in ways no one could predict. For the Bulls, it meant a championship window suddenly closing. For the league, it meant the loss of its youngest MVP. But for Derrick Rose, it meant something far more personal: an identity shaken. The days that followed were filled with speculation. Could he return the same? Would he ever regain that first step? History had shown how cruel knee injuries could be. Some players came back diminished. Others never fully returned. Critics emerged quickly, dissecting coaching decisions, questioning minutes played, assigning blame. But none of that noise compared to the battle Rose now faced internally. Rehabilitation became his new arena. No roaring crowds. No bright lights. Just early mornings, resistance bands, cautious steps. Every exercise was a test of patience. Every small improvement felt microscopic compared to the mountain ahead. Doubt lingered, not just from outsiders, but from within. Could his body still respond the same way? Could trust be rebuilt in a knee that had betrayed him? Yet even in isolation, there was resolve. Rose had built his life on overcoming obstacles. From the streets of Chicago to the biggest stage in basketball. This was different, heavier, more uncertain. But quitting had never been part of his vocabulary. The injury had taken his momentum, but it had not taken his will. And as he began the slow process of rebuilding, a new chapter quietly started. One defined not by speed or vertical leaps, but by resilience. As the months turned into seasons, a new question began to follow Derrick Rose everywhere he went. What if? What if that knee had never given out? What if those final seconds had passed without incident? The imagination of fans filled in the blanks. Multiple MVPs, deep playoff runs, perhaps championships, a dynasty reborn. The version of Derrick Rose that existed before the injury felt limitless, and that made the loss feel even heavier. Every time he stepped back onto the court, flashes of his former brilliance reminded the world of what had been interrupted. A sudden burst past a defender, a fearless drive into traffic, a clutch shot that silenced a crowd. In those moments, it was as if time briefly reversed. But basketball is unforgiving. Consistency defines greatness, and injuries steal consistency first. There were nights of hesitation, nights when the lift wasn't quite the same, when the landing looked cautious instead of natural. Analysts dissected every performance, measuring him against an earlier version. Yet something else began to take shape beneath the surface. The narrative slowly shifted from dominance to perseverance. Rose was no longer just the youngest MVP in history. He was a symbol of resilience. Teammates respected the grind. Opponents understood the courage it took simply to step back into competition. The question of what could have been never disappeared, but it began to share space with a deeper appreciation for what still was. The story was no longer about lost potential alone. It was about survival, adaptation, and the quiet strength required to continue. In time, the injury became part of a larger legacy rather than the entire definition of it. Derrick Rose's career was undeniably altered, but it was not erased. He reinvented himself, adjusting his game, relying more on skill and timing than pure explosion. The league evolved around him, new stars rising as the spotlight shifted. Yet whenever he had a breakout performance, whenever he delivered a vintage moment, the reaction carried extra weight. It wasn't just celebration, it was validation. Proof that the spirit of a competitor can endure even when the body is tested. Those 47 seconds came to represent more than an injury. They became a reminder of how fragile greatness can be, how quickly trajectories can pivot. But they also highlighted something profound. Adversity reveals character. Derrick Rose's journey forced fans to confront the reality that sports are not scripted fairy tales. They are human stories, filled with unpredictability, heartbreak, and resilience. In the end, his legacy extended beyond statistics and awards. It lived in the courage to return, the humility to adapt, and the determination to keep writing new chapters after the script had been torn apart.